Hi, my name's Terry Grigsby. This is our second video in a series on how to change from standard form quadratic equations into the dreaded vertex form of a standard equation. So let's go on over to our whiteboard and we'll take a look at our problems. Here we are in the whiteboard on changing standard equations into vertex form. This is the second video in the series. Please feel free to visit my website at tagtutoring.com. Okay, so here's our first equation. The reason that it's different than the other ones that we did in the first video is because it has that 5 in front of the x squared. The ones from last time did not have that in front of it. So I'm still going to kind of start this the same way. I want to box off those variables. So I'm going to box off the 5x squared and the minus 30. And now, instead of going straight to completing the square, what I want to do is factor out whatever's in front of the x squared. It doesn't matter, whatever is in front of this, that's what we take out. So in this case, we're going to take out the 5. So if I take out the 5, that will leave me with x squared minus 6x. Okay? And then I still have the other parts. I still have y equals, I still have the minus 10x, 10.5, excuse me. Now, if you look at what's in the parentheses now, x squared minus 6x, that is not a completed square. And a lot of people think it is, and they're done, and they're ready to move on. But you haven't completed the square yet. All you've done is factor out the 5. Okay, so now what we want to do is I want to look at the new variables that we have there. And I'm going to look at just the variable part of it for right now. And that part looks like the last video, and we can just complete the square on it. So to do that, we'd go x, keep the sign the same, half of 6 would be 3, and then we're going to square it. So that part has completed the square. Okay, and you're going to know if you've completed the square because inside this parenthesis, it will just be an x. It won't ever be like an x squared or anything like that. Okay, so now, how are we going to tell what we're going to add to the bottom here? Well, first of all, let me write the rest of it. So we still have y, we still have the 5, we still have the minus 10.5. So, just like we did last time in the last video, I am going to take the number here and square it. So that gives me 9, right? But now because I pulled the 5 out, I've got to multiply it by that 5. So no matter what you multiply and take out when you factor, you've got to multiply by that number now. So that gives me a 45. So now on the end here, remember, I'm going to do the opposite. Okay, so now what I have left is y equals 5, quantity x minus 3 squared, minus 10.5, and then minus 45. That's that little extra that we got when we did the perfect square. Okay, so then that will give us, if we clean that up a little bit, y equals 5, quantity x minus 3 squared, minus 55.5. And that is in vertex form. And if we needed to, remember, we could get the vertex. And as always, we're going to be really careful. Next to the x, you're going to switch the sign. If it's minus 3, I bring it down as 3. You always switch the sign. The last number you keep exactly the same, minus 55.5. And that's your vertex, which is why you'd ever put anything in vertex form in the first place. So again, just to reiterate what we just did, if there's a number in front of the x squared, you have to factor it out first, then complete the square on it. And after you get the number from completing the square, you multiply it by that factored out part. Okay, and here we are in the next problem here. Again, we have something in front of the x squared. So we are going to need to factor that out. So I'm going to factor out the negative 2. And I'm only going to do that on the variable parts. I don't care what that last number is on the end. I'm only going to factor it out of our variables. Okay, so I'm going to take a negative 2 out. That will leave me an x squared minus 9x. I'm going to double check that just because I'm a little nervous. So is negative 2 times x squared negative 2x squared? Yeah. It's negative 2 times negative 9x, 18x. Yeah, it is. So it looks like we factored that correctly. So now let me bring down everything else we have. We have a y and we have a minus 7. Now, have we completed the square yet? No. All we've done so far is factor. And I know that because inside the parentheses, I still have an x squared. Okay, so now my next step here is going to be to complete the square on just the variable part, right? So here we go. If I complete the square on that, I'll get x, keep the sign the same, half of 9. Now this is where it's tricky. What is half of 9? Well, you could say 9 halves, or I'm going to go to a decimal and make that 4.5. Because you're always dividing it in half, you always get a number that stops, okay? So it'll just be 4.5 here, but it will be squared because I'm completing the square. Okay, so now I'm going to keep the rest of the stuff the same. So y equals negative 2, and I still have the minus 7 on the end. So after to complete the square again, I took half of 9 to get 4.5. Okay, so now I have to figure out what's that extra part on the end that I got because I completed the square. So, okay, so I am going to have to go 4.5 squared times the negative 2 that was out here. Okay, so by the cleverness of TV and my calculator, I have figured it out. This is negative 40.5. And so I'm going to do the opposite. And that would be then a positive 40.5. Okay, so let's see what we've got here now. So we've got y equals negative 2 quantity x minus 4.5 squared. Now, if I do this last part, that gave me a 33.5. And that would be Vertex form. It's a little bit trickier when there's a number in front, isn't it? But it's doable if you just remember to factor out that number first, then start taking half of things and do the opposite on the end. So again, if I was doing my vertex, I'd be careful. I'd go to positive 4.5, and then the y coordinate would be 33.5. All right, and that's how you're going to change from a standard form equation of a quadratic into a vertex form if there's a number in front of the x squared. Good luck. I know you can do this. I'll see you in my next video. Be sure to visit my website at www.tagtutoring.com.